Welcome back, Tribe. I have an episode here that's Americans being priced out of the housing market. Study finds, like as if we needed a study to know that nobody could afford housing anymore. And Wall Street, like it says right here, Wall Street's housing takeover. We need studies, boys, to show us officially how we're getting effed.
There's a new study out of Harvard that has found millions of Americans are simply being priced out of homeownership.
Yeah, I'm sure many of you feel this already. The school's Joint Center for Housing study says both homeowners and renters are struggling with high housing costs. Take a look at this. The U.S. home price index is 47% higher than in early 2020. That's pushing the median sales price to about 5 times an average household income, which is just incredible. Meantime, rents are up 26% across the country since early 2020.
Joining us now is Chris Herbert. He is the managing director of the Joint Center for...
Greatest country on earth, can't afford to have a family. Greatest country on earth, American dream is dead. Greatest country on earth, am left to starve out in the street if I get fired. The government will come take my home if I miss paying property taxes because property values have skyrocketed, but my pension hasn't. I've put in 60 years of hard work. The government took my property away because I couldn't afford it anymore. This has happened to senior citizens in the United States of America. They have lost their homes because inflation has kicked up the prices of their houses so much they could not afford the new property taxes that were imposed upon them. You had to choose food on your limited pension or your house that you worked your entire life for. Holy shit, bro. Talk about priorities.
Housing studies at Harvard. So, Chris, we know about inflation. We know that there's a lot of drivers. But when it comes to housing in particular, what is fueling this trend? Why are rental and housing costs really outpacing everything else, particularly including salary?
It's important to look at both the short term and the long term and thinking about what's happening in the housing market. In the short term, what we had was almost a perfect storm during the pandemic. Going into the pandemic, we had tight housing markets to begin with. We had low vacancy rates for both for sale and rental housing. And then during the pandemic, we had an incredible increase.
Why won't they build single family homes anymore that are reachable by average everyday Americans, the middle class? Why do they only build luxury condos or high-end condos? Or high-end apartments, luxury this, luxury that. There's nothing but townhouses, high-density building, all luxury-oriented. Nothing for the average single-family home in America. Does not exist anymore. Neighborhoods don't get built out for single-family homes. Why? Because the builders figured out they could squeeze far more fucking money out of everybody's wallets by funneling you into high-density housing, luxury townhomes, luxury condominiums, or mega mansions. They'll just build little McMansions everywhere. So the normal everyday American is being priced out of the American dream. Builders don't give a shit. They're in it for the money. Wall Street doesn't give a shit. They'll buy up all those assets with all the billions of dollars, trillions of dollars that they're making from the stock market and that whole fucking scam. And what's left at the end of the stick? A smack on your ass because you're not getting any carrots. You're being left destitute for a job that can hardly afford groceries anymore. Gas, healthcare, haha, that's a joke. We've been living without healthcare in America. Average family doesn't have healthcare. The average family is in such a poor situation that they're forced to go to the grocery store and buy off-name brand shit or survive on beans, rice, the very basic. The most powerful country on earth treats its citizens like dog shit. And they're surprised why we're heading in the wrong direction. People feel like life is meaningless, like they're working basically as slaves. They can't get ahead. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Average American has $400 or less in their bank account for an emergency. Fucking hell.
In demand for housing, both as people came to realize they weren't just going to live in their homes, but work and study there because they had more money, because they weren't spending money on anything else pretty much, and because student loans were deferred. You put together that plus interest rates below 3%, and that tight supply led to this increase in housing prices that you're showing on the screen now. So the short run story is that tight supply against strong demand. But I think it's important to look at a longer term perspective. If we go back decades, we'll find that housing costs have been outpacing incomes since the 1960s. Why is that? Partly because of the fact that land on which all homes sit have been growing faster than incomes. And secondly, because the homes that we're putting there have gotten larger, higher quality, and the efficiencies in the construction of homes that we've seen in other industries like automaking and the like, there haven't been those increases in the efficiency of construction to bring down those costs. high land costs, high cost of construction have outpaced incomes for a long time, but they got a lot worse during the pandemic.
Now, I'm looking into your report, and you do highlight that single family construction is accelerating across the country. So there is a gradual increase in the availability of homes. But what kind of future is this cost making for all of us, particularly, groups hardest hit by high housing and rental expenses?
Yeah, we are seeing single family construction rise modestly, which is kind of shocking when you consider that interest rates have been north of 7%.
Yeah.
But the reason for that is because the fact that most homeowners are sitting on mortgages under 4%, in many cases under 3%. They're just not inclined to sell and have to face those higher mortgage costs. So with so few existing homes on the market, home builders are responding by doing what they can. But in terms of what this means, I mean, it's really pricing out first-time home buyers. The cost of a monthly payment on a median price home at north of $3,000, you need $120,000 in income to afford that.
You hear that shit? Median price homes in the United States are now $3,000, almost $3,100 a month after taxes, insurance, and a 3.5% down payment, and you need to make $120,000 to afford it. Where are all the six-figure jobs, guys? Honestly, and they expect you to start a family on these incomes. And we're not factoring in graduating college with immense debt, $50,000, $100,000, so on and so on. Cannot be discharged. God forbid you need to go to the emergency room. My uncle had a stint put in, $1 million. This shit blows my mind. Do you know what an American can purchase overseas? There are ways for you to buy property overseas. Some of it involves a woman. Others involve a co-opting thing where the locals own a majority of the share. Think a condo building or a high rise. It's 51% owned by locals. You're allowed to own. Like in Thailand, you could own a condominium. It's yours under certain rules. You can buy properties in other countries where you can get so much for your money. I know this isn't an option for a lot of people, and it's kind of crazy to even say, but it's becoming more and more evident that life in America cannot be sustained for the average middle class family. And I mean family loosely, because the middle class has disappeared and all the families along with it seem to be disappearing. It just becomes middle class dinks or just middle class single people that are on and off relationships. Seriously, who can afford a date when you're dropping $3,100 just to get a home? You need to make $120,000 to qualify. And this is not talking about all the other costs. I'm going to assume you're going to want to have health insurance at $120,000. I'm going to assume that you're going to have a nice car, something decent at least. I'm going to assume that you live in a place where you have to commute within a big city to make this $120,000 in the first place. So that's just the median. What does it cost to live in a place close by to work, where the jobs are high enough in the six figures? After food costs, transportation costs, miscellaneous costs, shit breaking here and there, got to replace the AC, got the pipe that needs, the toilet broke, blah, blah, blah. Maintenance costs on a house can creep up on you, surprisingly. Where do you have the extra money for dates, for a wife, for children? This shit is crazy. People are living in dingy ass apartments with like one little dog. And that's about the only joy they have anymore, is their one pup or cat. They can't afford to have kids. They're becoming dog moms, cat moms. Why? Because it's too expensive to have children. There's no man in sight. Nobody can afford anything. We're all broke. And so we're getting what we can, little pets in cubicles of apartments. This shit is crazy, dude. Society is failing in the West. Nobody wants to tackle the issues. We got mega corporations coming in here, BlackRock or Blackstone, whatever their arm is called in the investment side of these housing purchases. And they just buy up multiple properties. I was renting a place in Arizona for $2,600 a month. Beautiful house, 2,200 square feet with a pool. It was nice in a gated community. And I swear to you, like at least half of those houses, we're speaking to some of the neighbors there that we would see outside, half of the houses were owned by a company out of state that was renting them out on a permanent basis pretty much. That shit's crazy. Rental agents that you go see, like real estate agents as well, basically spit on your face when you talk to them. I remember when I was looking for a house to rent, the mood had shifted completely. They used to hound you. They used to beg you to come see the property. They used to try to offer you like 1 month off. There used to be so many incentives. And they used to work so hard to get you to rent. I'll never forget, the guy sat his ass on the kitchen counter, was face down on his phone while I was walking the property, didn't bother showing me around or anything. He's like, if you like it, let me know. If not, it's whatever. It's whatever. We'll Airbnb it out anyways. And that's what happened. They ended up Airbnb-ing out the property. They didn't even wait like a week. They don't give a shit about average everyday Americans. It's in incredible what has happened to the middle class in this country. And they're surprised that if you can, most Americans will leave, are going overseas for a new life. The new American dream is leaving America. There's a reason that's trending, and there's a reason that's becoming far more popular. Imagine you go to school. This is just for the men's side. Imagine you go to school, you're 100 grand in debt or so in a place that hates you because you're a man and it's toxically masculine. And then you go to apply for jobs, which you probably won't get because of DEI hires. And then in your shitty job you do get has nothing to do with probably what you're doing, what you're majoring in school. So now you have shitty pay, in debt, can hardly afford to make the student loan payments. And you're looking at yourself and going, where the fuck does buying a house factor into my life anytime soon? Where does family planning enter into the near future of my life? Even if I meet a woman and she earns a comparable salary, we're just one of millions dual income, no kid household because we can't afford it even on 2 incomes. 2, bro. Not 1, 2 incomes is still not enough. What?
1 in 7 renters can afford homes. So for young folks today seeking that dream of home ownership, the path to get there is really difficult. And I don't want to lose sight, too, on the rental side. The pain is being felt across the board, across renters, but mostly for very low-income renters who are 83% of whom are spending more than 30% of their income. 65% are spending more than 50% of their income. And the amount they have left over at the end of the month is very little for everything else.
Now, Chris, this is a problem that I think anecdotally, many of our viewers, all of us understand. You guys have quantified it. People are also looking at you as the experts from Harvard. Is there a resolution to this problem?
There is, and it's going to take some time, but there's twofold. As I mentioned, part of the reason we're in this problem is because of the fact that land is expensive and the cost of producing housing has gotten higher. The solution to that is we need to reduce the restrictions on how much housing we can build, the type of housing we can build, meaning we've got to build housing at greater densities to make greater use of that land. And that might mean building more multifamily housing in some places, but it also means building smaller, more efficient single-family homes. We've got to take a look at regulations and make sure that what we're mandating for health and safety is not excessive. So we need to build smaller, simpler homes. So that's on the regulatory side. And we can definitely do that and free up the ability of the private sector to produce housing that's needed for folks who have decent incomes. But we can't also overlook the fact that we need to expand the housing safety net for those who have incomes that are just beyond the reach of the private sector. And we also need to think about expanding the support we provide, financial support for first-time homebuyers, particularly first-generation homebuyers who don't have the bank of mom and dad to turn to make sure those folks have the cash they need to come to the closing table to be able to buy that first home.
Yeah, Chris, Herbert, this is such an important topic. It impacts everybody. Folks should go ahead and dig into your report, The State of the Nation's House.
What do you expect when corporations and investors now own around 30% of all homes? That is a travesty if that's the real figures. Tax the poor, give breaks to the rich, enforce strict zoning, hike inflation, don't build affordable homes. I'm amazed we have this problem. In other news, grass is green, water is wet. We're being priced out by large corporations that are buying homes. Everybody knows exactly what the problem is. Is there a solution to this? Back in the day when I purchased my first home to live in, that was Miami in the early 1990s. First mortgages with rates of 8 to 9 and 9 to 10 were typical. People will have to accept the possibility that we won't ever return to 3%. If sellers must sell, home prices will have to decline and lower valuations will follow. Pretty sure I'm not alone in my chain of thought. Thanks for the international corporations that could still afford to buy with cash. Gee, look, here it is. I lost my housing twice during the pandemic and then couldn't afford the skyrocketing rents anymore. So I ended up buying an old Toyota Sienna minivan to live in. Fuck. Man, how many millions are in this predicament? Can't even afford apartments. Companies buying real estate. Look, this guy just says some common sense shit. And foreign ownership of all homes and land in the United States. And corporate ownership of homes. Try and fix the insurance industry. Build smaller homes. Build more land-efficient, dense row homes and condos near downtowns. Simple. This is laughed out loud when hearing the guy said homes have higher quality now that in the past, as someone that worked formerly in construction and remodeling, I could tell you the homes of today are built like straight dog shit, can get blown away by a little gust of wind. Your house would not probably pass most inspections. It's not built to last. It is a pile of sticks. It's so pathetic the way we build housing. We build mass production cheap housing. Oh, look, they're already freaking out. Experts predict grim fate for housing market if rates go down. Let's see.
All right. In the meantime, I do want to get the impact right now we're seeing in real estate rates and market rates, mortgage rates, because of the backup we've seen in some of these other rates, like the 10-year note. Now, there's a little bit of a delay effect with the backup in that and what's happening on the 30-year fixed rate front. It did move to around 6.88%. Others argue with the backup we've seen, it will be well over 7%. Bill Pulte Capital CEO, his thoughts on that. What do you think, Bill?
I think that inflation's here to stay, Neil. I think you're going to have mortgage rates are going to be high. And I think that housing prices are going to continue to go up. Neil, if what President Biden said yesterday, he said that there might be a rate cut this year. If that happens, Neil, I think you could see housing prices go even higher.
So by that argument, I think that a rate cut, whatever people think of the justification of that, it could be a little inflationary here. But what do you make of it?
It could be very inflationary. And the problem is if you don't own a home and you don't own a home right now, you're going to have a two-pronged problem. Number one, you're going to have inflation, which means that just by time going by, the inflation, the cost of the house will go up. The other thing is if the Federal Reserve comes in and let's say helps out a politician before an election and reduces rates, even with a high inflation print, you could see those home prices go up, in my opinion, 5, 10, 20%. That would be just insane, Neil. You would start to have a buying frenzy again, much like during COVID. So I think right now the good thing is that mortgage rates are high, but if they lower those rates, those prices could skyrocket again.
Indeed, a lot depends on those rates, to your point, Bill. And
And this guy says, our children won't be able to buy a home if housing prices don't go down. What are you talking about, bro? We can't buy homes now. What children? And have children with who? You can't afford anything anymore. Holy hell. I'm just curious about the guys that managed to get their homes probably at the last great time that was left at the 3% interest rates during COVID. Everybody else after that, I know I was house shopping too, and the house I was looking at jumped up $100,000. Other houses were jumping up 200, 300,000. I was in Phoenix. Obviously, the market was stupid hot year over year, but I was literally watching houses that were some even double or damn near double. It's insane what has happened to the market. I don't know. I'm curious. What do you guys think in the comments below? I'm glad I left and I'm in Bucharest and in Eastern Europe. And obviously it's way cheaper. And the guys that'll tell you that they're in Southeast Asia, making the power of the dollar last and go much further. This shit is wild, bro. America is literally sucking the life out of every single person. Your soul is being drained out of your body slowly, working you to death. You're being ground to dust for nothing. There's no end in sight. Retirement where? You're going to work until you're dead. This is nuts. Anyways, curious what you guys have to say, what you're dealing with in the housing market, if you're even in the market, if you could afford to be in the market, or if you're selling. And thanks for everybody that's been signing up for the private consults, getting t-shirts, and signing up to the private community. We have calls 4 times a week. Love to have you there. And links are on in the description below. Take care, guys. It's rough, and it's only getting rougher, apparently. We should be headed to official recession land soon. See you next time.